Hello, we are Ursa Major, and we're here to talk about nonverbal communication and senior missionaries. I'm Johnny.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Quincy.
I'm Christian.
I'm Steph.
Muela.
And first, we're going to talk about the senior missionship experience that I went on to 2 years ago. In summer of 2018, the basketball team traveled to Taiwan to glorify and talk about the Bible, a mission trip. Going there, we knew a little about their culture and that the culture was going to be a big difference than what it was here. But we didn't know exactly what. The first day we got there, before we went out to talk about the Bible, we had probably a 10-minute sit down on what is right and wrong, nonverbals in the culture. But it didn't seem like it was enough information for us. It was said nonverbal and verbal communication is very big in Taiwan. The way you present yourself and the way you act and show signs of respect and even disrespect. When greeting, you shake hands and bow, as well as leaving, you bow. Showing sense of respect to the host, we had to make sure that we kept good eye contact and posture when interacting and listening to the host. Any sign of not listening or bad posture was a sign of disrespect, and as we learned that one day at a school event. They said that our posture showed that we did not want to be there and was disrespectful. All of us felt like we were doing the right thing, but never felt like it was. We always tried to be respectful 100% of the time, but never sure 100% of the time what was really correct. That's why we need a more cultural lesson before we go to a new culture, so that we don't show a sign of disrespect and respect the people of the country. We want to leave with a positive note and hope that we did for future experiences.
So, in the article I read called Cracking the Nonverbal Code Intercultural Competence in Gesture Recognition Across Cultures, they performed two studies. The first study that they did was they wanted to figure out if there was an association between being able to recognize gestures and adapting to that culture. The article stated that purpose for the study was in quotation. The purpose of this first study was to examine whether the ability to accurately recognize valid and invalid gestures is associated with the length of stay in a foreign culture, and whether this ability is positively related to self-reported intercultural communication competence. End of quotations. Once the study was completed, their results did successfully support their hypothesis, meaning there was a correlation between the length the person was in the U.S. for and their level of gesture recognition accuracy. The second study they conducted said the purpose of the study was to examine whether the positive association between gesture recognition ability and assessments of intercultural communication competence from study 1 would replicate when such assessments were made by non-natives themselves, but by external observers native to the foreign culture. Results indicated that this is indeed the case. Externally assessed intercultural communication competence was positively associated with performance on the gesture recognition accuracy, as well as externally assessed motivation to learn the new culture. This study supported their second hypothesis, which consisted of two parts. First, that recognition ability on gesture recognition accuracy had a positive relationship with self-reported intercultural communication competence. Their other hypothesis for hypothesis 2 was also supported in that gesture recognition accuracy had a positive correlation with self and other related perceptions of intercultural communication competence. The article stated that this information regarding gesture recognition accuracy is useful because it will help with training cross-culturally. People tend to be trained in areas of verbal communication, religion, norms, and values of the places that they are going, but they are typically never trained in the area of nonverbal gestures. It is incredibly important to be well-versed in all cultures, nonverbal gestures, because it has a strong correlation with a person's intercultural communication competence, as we saw in the study. It would only make sense then that those who train individuals on cross-cultural behavior, that they also train in the area of nonverbal gestures. The study suggests that when going to a new place that we are not native to, we should practice gesture humility as well as working on gesture recognition skills in order to have more effective interactions.
Now we have a video that talks about facial expressions that goes into the second study that we did.
Anger is accompanied by lowered eyebrows drawn together, tense and narrowed eyes, and tight lips. Disgust by the lips pulled up and the nose crinkling. In fear, the upper white of the eyes are revealed as the eyebrows raise and the mouth stretches open, while surprise looks similar, but with rounded eyebrows and relaxed lips. Sadness is indicated by the inner corners of the eyebrows being drawn inwards and upwards, drooping eyes, and a downturned mouth. And of course, there's happiness, lips drawn up and back, and raised cheeks causing wrinkling around the eyes. More recently, researchers have proposed additional entries such as contempt, shame, and disapproval. But opinions vary on how distinct boundaries between these categories can be drawn. So, if Ekman and other researchers are correct, what makes certain expressions universal? And why are they expressed in these particular ways? Scientists have a lot of theories rooted in our evolutionary history. One is that certain expressions are important for survival. Fear and surprise could signal to others an immediate danger. Studies of humans and some other primates have found that we pay more attention to faces that signal threats over neutral faces, particularly when we're already on high alert. Expressions also could help improve group fitness by communicating our internal states to those around us. Sadness, for example, signals to the group that something's wrong. There's some evidence that expressions might be even more directly linked to our physiology. The fear expression, for instance, could directly improve survival in potentially dangerous situations by letting our eyes absorb more light and our lungs take in more air, preparing us to fight or flee. There's still much research to be done in understanding emotional expression, particularly as we learn more about the inner workings of the brain. But if you ever find yourself among strangers in a strange land, a friendly smile could go a long way.
All right, so my article is about facial expressions as well. The universality hypothesis claims that all humans communicate in 6 emotional states, and they are happy, surprise, fear, disgust, anger, and sadness. In this article, they are trying to disprove that claim by using a computer graphics platform that combines generative grammar with visual perception. They look at the mind's eye of 15 Western culture and 15 Eastern culture individuals and reconstruct their mental representations of the 6 expressions of emotion. They also conducted a clustering analysis and mutual information, and as they predicted, Western culture models form 6 distinct and emotionally homogeneous clusters, but the Eastern culture models show a very culture-specific representation of emotion, which is not universal. They found 2 main findings after their research that helped them disprove this theory. Whereas Westerners represent each of the 6 basic facial expressions of emotion, Easterners do not. Secondly, the Easterners represent emotional intensity with distinctive dynamic eye activity. This shows the power of different cultures. People think that these 6 emotions are hardwired in our brain, but this study proves otherwise. The main thing they found was that emotions are expressed using culture-specific facial signals. Some are the same in both cultures, but a lot are different, and that is all about the culture and where you come from. After finding out this information, I can see how incredibly important it is to train our students before we go on trips all over the world. As it says in the study, nonverbals are very culture specific, so doing training to learn about the culture you are going to is very important. When we went to Taiwan, we had no clue about their culture-specific nonverbals, and at times probably came off as very rude. When we go on these trips, we are trying to witness the Word of God to these people, and the last thing we want to do is come off as rude.
All right. So as a group, we came up with a couple of recommendations for students from CU going abroad. So first of all, it is important for students going abroad to be aware of nonverbal communication norms of the place they're visiting. And here are a few things to be mindful of. Pointing with a finger is considered to be rude in many Asian cultures. And some cultures do not show as much emotion as they believe showing emotions is a sign of weakness. Eye contact can be perceived differently in other cultures. In most African and Asian nations, eye contact is seen as disrespectful, while some Arab nations perceive eye contact as a sign of honesty and showing interest. And it's the same in the United States too. In America, like when you have eye contact with a person, you can think of that person as honest and you're showing interest in what they're saying. Also, cornerstone can offer a class that offers specific lessons about different cultures for students going on international trips. This a class like this would have helped the basketball team with their trip to Taiwan. And if they were taught more about the culture in Taiwan, they would have been more aware of ways to communicate non-verbally. And lastly, say if offering a class may be a stretch or like it's too much for the university, we could offer like a 2 weeks training before students go abroad. Invite an expert in nonverbal communication to advise students about the place they're going to, and in that way they will be more aware and more mindful of their actions when they're abroad.
Oh, so now we're going to talk about the biblical worldview. And in Matthew, when Jesus met the disciple after his resurrection, he said to them, "Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." And here we see that Jesus gives us a mission to go in the world and make disciples. But we cannot be effective if we come across as rude. And like Johnny said at the beginning, they really had no idea of what they were doing. And it really um, kind of stops the message from going across as a good message, because when we uh, associate negative assumption or negative things with a good message, it really kind of stops us from really considering that message and even believing in that message. And the second thing with the biblical worldview is something I call the two-way effect of mission trips, where we get to leave an impact, but we also get to be impacted. And it's in order to be impacted, it's important to again be aware of the culture we're going into, and also be willing to really participate in that culture. Means learning and doing like they're doing. It's trying to figure out why things are a certain way, and also be willing to learn. And it's really important to, like I said in the first one, be aware in order to be effective, and also be mindful that we're going to leave an impact but also be impacted.
In conclusion, to summarize everything up, we talked about our CU mission trip to Taiwan and how we were not prepared in with the nonverbal in the gestures and everything that we did in Taiwan. And moving on to the two articles, the cracking the nonverbal code, and the purpose was to crack the code and learn about different nonverbals, and it will help us in cross cultural training. And the second article, facial expressions, and this purpose was to prove that facial expressions are universal, and it's a great nonverbal sign when going to different countries. Moving on to the recommendations, we believe that we should have a class, and it should be around 2 weeks of training before going to another country and understanding their nonverbal gestures. So it would benefit us, and ending with the biblical worldview, understanding the two-way effect of the mission trips, and like we said about Matthew, the book of Matthew. And we just want to say thank you for listening, and have a great day.